I still don't know if I believe in fate, but if it exists, mine was sealed the moment I opened that envelope. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, the kind of dull, colorless morning where you can almost feel the weight of routine pressing down on you. I'd just come home from another night shift at the diner, greasy uniform still clinging to me, when I noticed the letter sticking out from under my door. Heavy paper, no return address, my full name printed neatly in black ink. No one sends letters anymore. That was the first red flag. I tossed it onto the kitchen counter and forgot about it for a few hours, too tired to care. But when I finally slid it open, what I found inside changed everything. It was from a law firm in upstate Massachusetts, Harland and Finch, LLP. The letter said I'd been named the sole heir to an estate belonging to one Ms. Evelyn Thorne, who had passed away 3 months earlier. According to them, she was my great-aunt. Thing is, I didn't have a great-aunt. At least, not one I'd ever heard of. The letter included a formal notice of inheritance, a copy of the will, and an invitation to attend the reading and transfer of property at the Thorne family estate. Travel expenses covered, accommodation provided. It sounded absurd, like one of those scam emails that promise an inheritance if you just send your details. But this wasn't a scam. The documents looked real, embossed seals, notarized signatures, even a phone number. I looked up the firm, and sure enough, it existed. Real office, real lawyers. That's when curiosity started whispering louder than common sense. I didn't have much keeping me in the city. My mom had died when I was 17, my dad was never in the picture, and I'd been drifting ever since. If some long-lost relative really had left me something, a house, money, anything, I figured I'd be stupid not to check it out. So I called the number. The woman on the other end, a polite secretary named Martha, confirmed everything. The will was legitimate. The transfer would take place that weekend at the Thorne estate, just outside a small town called Ashwood Hollow. Miss Thorne left very specific instructions, Martha said. You'll need to stay at the property overnight for the formal handover. The caretakers will host you. The caretakers? Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Dyer. They've been maintaining the estate since Miss Thorne's passing. Her voice carried this rehearsed warmth, but something about it felt too even, like she was reading from a script. Still, I agreed to come. She emailed me the train ticket within the hoe. The ride to Ashwood Hollow took nearly 8 hours. The further north I went, the more the world seemed to fall away. Highways thinning into narrow back roads, gas stations replaced by endless stretches of pine forest. When I finally stepped off the train, I was the only passenger left on the platform. Ashwood Hollow was quiet, too quiet. The air smelled like damp leaves and something faintly metallic. The town was small, a handful of brick buildings, a diner, a post office, and a single gas station. A faded sign at the edge of town read, "Welcome to Ashwood Hollow, established 1873. A black car was waiting for me by the curb. The driver, a tall man in a gray suit, stepped out before I even approached. Miss Thorne? He asked. I hesitated. That's not my last name, I said. It's just, I was invited here for the will reading. He gave a stiff smile. Of course, please, come with me. He introduced himself as Mr. Dyer, the caretaker. Up close, he looked older than I'd first thought, late 50s maybe, with skin like worn leather and eyes that never quite met mine. He spoke in clipped formal tones, every sentence polished. His wife, he told me, was already at the estate preparing dinner. The drive took nearly 40 minutes. The road climbed steadily upward through the woods until the trees thinned and the mansion came into view. And God, I'll never forget that first look. It stood alone on a hill, massive and skeletal, with towers and balconies jutting out like broken ribs. The windows were dark, the stone facade streaked with moss. Iron gates framed the entrance. the kind that probably hadn't opened in decades until now. It wasn't just old. It looked abandoned. But when Mr. Dyer drove through the gates, the gravel driveway was perfectly raked, the hedges trimmed. Someone had been keeping this place alive, at least on the surface. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. I lied and nodded. Mrs. Dyer was waiting at the door when we arrived. She was small, almost bird-like, with pale hair pulled into a tight bun and a smile that never reached her eyes. The kind of woman who looked like she'd been born in the wrong century. "You must be her," she said, clasping my hands in both of hers. "She said you'd come." "She?" I asked. Mrs. Dyer just smiled again. "Dinner is ready. You must be starving." Inside, the house smelled faintly of old wood and lavender. The grand foyer was breathtaking, a chandelier dripping with dust, portraits of severe-looking strangers lining the walls. My footsteps echoed on the marble floor. They'd prepared a full meal, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, even wine. Too much food for 3 people. I tried to make small talk, but they mostly watched me eat. Every time I looked up, at least one of them was staring. "So," I asked finally, "how long did you work for my aunt?" Mrs. Dyer tilted her head. "Oh, a very long time. We were with her until the end." "And she didn't have any other family?" "None that mattered," Mr. Dyer said sharply, then smiled to soften it. "You'll see tomorrow. The lawyer will explain everything." After dinner, they led me upstairs to a guest room. It was surprisingly clean, though it smelled faintly of mildew. The walls were lined with old floral wallpaper, and a portrait of a stern woman hung above the bed. "She looks like you," Mrs. Dyer said quietly from the doorway. I glanced up at the painting, a woman in a dark dress, sitting in a high-backed chair, eyes cold and sharp. She did not look like me. "She's Evelyn Thorne," Mrs. Dyer said. "You have her eyes." That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked constantly, like it was breathing. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimed 12, though I never saw one anywhere. I thought I heard footsteps in the hallway once or twice. Slow, deliberate steps. But when I opened my door, the corridor was empty. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just an old house, and I was overtired. But just before I finally drifted off, I could swear I heard someone whisper my name. When I woke up, sunlight was spilling through the curtains in that dull, golden way that makes everything look a little unreal. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the old wallpaper, the heavy wooden furniture, the portrait of Evelyn Thorne staring down at me with that same cold expression. And it all came rushing back. The Dyers had already been up for hours. I could hear faint noises from downstairs. Dishes clinking, the low murmur of their voices, the scrape of a chair. When I checked my phone, there was no signal, not even one bar. I tried the Wi-Fi, nothing. Remote area, I told myself. Probably just bad reception. But something about it felt intentional. I washed up and went downstairs. Mrs. Dyer was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself as she cleaned. "Good morning, dear," she said, cheerful, but somehow rehearsed. "Breakfast is ready." She'd made eggs, toast, fruit, and tea, all arranged neatly like a magazine photo. "Mr. Dyer is out back," she added, tending to the grounds. "He's very particular about the gardens." I nodded, thanked her, and tried to eat, but my stomach wasn't cooperating. Everything tasted faintly metallic, like the air itself had been sitting in the same place for too long. After breakfast, I decided to explore the mansion a bit. Mrs. Dyer didn't protest, but she did insist on giving me a brief tour. The place was massive, 3 floors, maybe 4 if you counted the attic. The main hall connected to a sweeping staircase, with long corridors branching off into wings full of locked doors. "The west wing's closed off for repairs," she said when I tried one of the handles. "Structural issues. Wouldn't want you getting hurt." I asked what exactly needed repairing. "Oh," she said after a beat. "Just time." Everywhere I looked, there were little traces of a life frozen mid-breath. A tea set on a tray covered in dust. A piano that hadn't been played in decades. The faint smell of something sweet and rotting underneath the lavender polish they'd used to cover it. There were portraits everywhere. The same faces over and over. Stern men, severe women, none of them smiling. And always that same look in their eyes, watchful. I stopped at one large painting in particular, a family portrait. Evelyn Thorne was there, younger but unmistakable. Standing behind her was a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, with a hand resting on her shoulder. The brass plate beneath read, "The Thorne Family, 1892. That didn't make sense. Evelyn had supposedly died just 3 months ago. Even if she'd lived to be 100, she couldn't have been alive in 1892. "Family resemblance," Mrs. Dyer said softly behind me, startling me. I hadn't even heard her approach. Later that afternoon, I met Mr. Dyer out back. He was trimming hedges with a pair of shears, humming something tuneless. "You're settling in all right, I trust?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "just getting used to the place. It's big." He chuckled, low and dry. "Old houses are like people. They take a while to trust you." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I laughed politely. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at me in a way that made my skin crawl. "You're lucky, you know. Miss Thorne didn't trust easily. The fact that she chose you, well, that must mean something." "Did she ever mention me?" I asked. "To you?" He hesitated. "She mentioned family, said they'd forgotten her, said she'd fix that." He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Every sound felt amplified. The ticking of the pipes, the groan of the floorboards, wind rattling against the old windows. At one point, I thought I heard whispering again, just outside my door. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. Then, faint footsteps moving away. I opened the door a crack, heart hammering. The hallway was dark, except for the faint orange glow from a lamp at the far end. And there, standing just at the edge of the light, was Mrs. Dyer. She was facing away from me, motionless, hands clasped behind her back. "Mrs. Dyer?" I whispered. She didn't answer, didn't even turn around. Then, after what felt like a full minute, she started walking, slow, deliberate steps, right into the west wing, the one that was supposed to be locked. I waited until her footsteps faded, then went back to bed, or tried to, but I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen again, humming like nothing had happened. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. "Fine," I lied. "I thought I heard someone in the hallway, though. Maybe you?" "Oh dear," she said lightly. "You must have been dreaming. No one's allowed in the West Wing. Too dangerous." I wanted to ask why she'd gone in there, if she'd gone in there, but her expression made it clear the topic was closed. That afternoon, while they were both outside, I decided to do something stupid. I went exploring again, alone. The house was quieter than it should have been. Even my footsteps felt muffled. I started on the second floor, testing every door. Most were locked. A few creaked open into dust-filled bedrooms, untouched since the 1950s. Then I found a narrow hallway I hadn't noticed before, tucked behind a grandfather clock. It led to a smaller staircase that curved downward, not up. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to turn around, but curiosity won. The stairs ended at a wooden door with a heavy iron latch. It looked newer than the rest of the house, freshly fitted, like someone had replaced it recently. I tried the handle, locked, but I noticed something odd, faint light leaking through the crack beneath it, flickering light, candlelight, and then muffled voices, two of them, one male, one female. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakable, urgent, angry. Then something heavy scraped across the floor on the other side. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I backed away slowly, every step deliberate. When I reached the top of the stairs again, I froze. Because standing at the end of the hall, watching me, was Mr. Dyer. He smiled that same too perfect smile. "You seem lost." "I was just looking around," I said, trying to sound casual. "Didn't realize this part of the house was off limits." His eyes didn't leave mine. "Some doors aren't meant to be opened." I mumbled an apology and hurried back to my room, closing the door behind me. I didn't come out for the rest of the day. That night, I pushed a chair against my door before going to bed. It sounds paranoid now, but something had shifted. The Dyers' smiles were thinner, their words heavier. Every time I caught one of them watching me, it didn't feel like concern, it felt like calculation. And then, just before dawn, I woke to a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a creak, slow, deliberate, the sound of my doorknob turning. The chair held, but only barely. Whoever was on the other side tested it once, twice, and then stopped. Silence. Then a whisper. So soft I almost convinced myself I imagined it. "It's almost time." I didn't open the door. I sat there in the dark until the first gray light slid through the curtains. When I finally pushed the chair away, the knob was cold to the touch, like whoever had tried it had been standing there for a long time. Downstairs, the house felt off. The air was heavy, too still. The Dyers were nowhere to be found, though 2 teacups sat on the kitchen table, both half full, still steaming. I called out a couple of times. No answer, so I did the thing I swore I wouldn't do again. I went exploring. The west wing door was wide open. Yesterday it had been locked. Now the lock was broken clean through, metal twisted, like someone had forced it. Inside, the corridor smelled different. Old wood and something faintly sweet, like spoiled perfume. The wallpaper had peeled away in strips, revealing carved initials underneath. E.T. over and over again, scratched deep into the plaster. At the end of the hallway was another door, smaller, newer. The same one I'd seen down those hidden stairs. When I pressed my ear against it, I heard nothing. No voices, just the rhythmic drip of water somewhere below. Then the floorboards behind me creaked. I spun around. Mr. Dyer was standing halfway down the hall, a hammer hanging loosely from one hand. "Looking for something?" His voice was calm, but his eyes were flat, almost empty. "I heard a noise," I said. "Thought maybe something broke." He looked past me to the door. "Ah, that room. Miss Thorne never let anyone in there. Best to keep it that way." He stepped forward, set the hammer gently against the wall, and added almost kindly, "Curiosity can be dangerous here." I nodded and backed away. He watched me the whole way out. By lunch, they were both acting like nothing had happened. Mrs. Dyer even hummed while slicing bread, cheerful as ever. But the rhythm of her knife against the cutting board was too precise. 3 quick chops, pause, 3 more, like a signal. When she handed me my plate, I noticed her wrists. The skin was thin and pale, but beneath it, faint blue marks ringed each wrist like old bruises. Restraints? Rope? I couldn't tell. "Everything all right?" she asked when she caught me staring. "Yeah," I said, "just tired." Her smile flickered. "You'll sleep better tonight. We'll make sure of it." That evening, Mr. Dyer invited me to join them in the parlor. He said there was family business. to discuss before tomorrow's official transfer. The parlor was warm, lit only by firelight. On the mantel, an antique clock ticked steadily. Between the Dyers sat a large black folder, embossed with gold letters. The Thorne Estate. Miss Thorne was very specific in her instructions, Mr. Dyer began. She wanted her heir to understand the responsibilities that come with the house. He slid a page toward me. It wasn't a deed. It was a list. Names, dates, and strange notations beside each one. Fulfilled, offered, refused. Was blank except for my name. "What is this?" I asked. "A record," Mrs. Dyer said softly, "of those who kept the promise." "What promise?" They exchanged a glance. Mr. Dyer folded his hands. "The Thorne line built this town. Every generation paid its due, so the land would prosper. Miss Thorne couldn't complete the final offering herself, so she chose you." I laughed a little, thinking it had to be a joke. "Offerings? You make it sound like a cult." Silence. Neither of them smiled. Mrs. Dyer leaned forward. "It isn't a cult, dear. It's tradition, service, balance." His voice followed me out of the room. "You can't leave yet. The solicitor won't arrive until morning." I tried calling for a ride anyway. Still no signal. The landline by the foyer was dead, just static. I packed my bag, planning to walk back to town if I had to. But when I looked out the window, the driveway gate was closed and the car was gone. That's when panic really set in. I waited until I heard them go upstairs. Their footsteps moved slowly overhead, then stopped. I counted to 100 before slipping out of my room with my phone flashlight. The house was dark, except for the glow from the west wing. The small door at the end of that hallway was open now, candlelight spilling out. I crept closer. The smell hit me first. Burnt wax and iron. Inside, the room wasn't a room at all, but a cellar stairwell, carved directly into the stone foundation. Candles lined the steps, hundreds of them, melting onto the floor. And below, in the flickering light, I saw them. The Dyers stood before what looked like a table draped in cloth. Only it wasn't a table. It was an altar. On it lay photographs, dozens of them, of people I didn't recognize. Old, faded, some recent. Each one pinned with a small iron nail through the forehead. Between them, a silver bowl filled with something dark. Mrs. Dyer's voice drifted up the stairs. "She comes tonight. The blood returns to the house." Mr. Dyer nodded, lifting a knife. Old, ceremonial, its blade catching the candlelight. That was enough. I backed away, careful not to let the floor creak. But halfway up the hall, something crunched under my shoe. A shard of glass. The sound was deafening in the silence. They both looked up. I ran, full sprint down the corridor, through the foyer, straight for the front doors. But the chain was already across them. Behind me, Mr. Dyer's voice echoed, "Miss Thorne, wait! You don't understand what she promised us." I yanked at the chain until my palms bled. No good. Then I bolted for the side window, smashed it with a candlestick, and climbed through into the rain. The woods swallowed me. Branches tore at my arms. Mud sucked at my shoes. Behind me, flashlights cut through the trees. Voices calling my name like they were reciting a prayer. The house must have its blood. The house must have its blood. I don't remember how long I ran. Hours, maybe. At some point, I stumbled onto a dirt road and just kept walking until headlights appeared. It was a truck. A local farmer, judging by the accent. He stopped, rolled down his window, and stared at me. Mud-soaked, bleeding, shaking. "Where'd you come from, miss?" he asked. "The Thorne Estate," I gasped. "They're trying to, He went pale. "You mean that old place up on Hollow Hill? It burned down 20 years ago." I just stared at him, unable to speak. He nodded toward the direction I'd come from. "There ain't nothing up there but ruins." They found me a day later at the local clinic, dehydrated and in shock. The police checked the property, said there was no sign of anyone named Dyer. The mansion was still standing, but abandoned. No furniture, no food, no candles. Just dust and broken glass. They told me I must have imagined it, hallucinated. Maybe I hit my head in the woods. But I know what I saw, because in my bag, the one I'd packed to leave, I found something that wasn't mine. A photograph, folded once down the middle. It was Evelyn Thorne, standing beside the Dyers, all three smiling. And scrawled across the back, in ink so fresh it smeared when I touched it, were 3 words. "Welcome home, Evelyn." I left Ashwood Hollow the same morning they discharged me from the clinic. The doctor said I'd been found wandering near the highway, covered in mud and scratches. No memory of the previous 12 hours. He called it a stress reaction. The police called it a misunderstanding. I called it hell. They offered to drive me back to Boston, but I refused. I just wanted to get as far from that town as possible. I booked a bus, kept my head down, and didn't sleep the entire ride home. But you don't really leave Ashwood Hollow. Not the way it follows you. The first week back, I tried to convince myself it had all been a breakdown. Maybe the Dyers were squatters, or locals playing some sick game. Maybe my mind filled in the rest to make sense of it. But then small things started happening. My phone, the one I'd had with me, was dead when they found me. It wouldn't turn on, even after I charged it. When I took it to a repair shop, the tech frowned and said, "That's weird. Looks like it's been wiped clean. Factory reset. But there's still a file here. Just one." He handed me his tablet to show me. The file was a photo, the same one that had been in my bag. Evelyn Thorne and the Dyers, smiling. Except this time, I was in it too, standing beside them. I moved apartments 2 weeks later. I thought changing everything would help. New address, new number, even switched jobs. But the feeling followed me. It wasn't fear exactly. It was presence, like someone was always just out of sight, watching. The first night in the new place, I woke to the faint sound of humming. A woman's voice, familiar, too familiar. It was that same tune Mrs. Dyer always hummed while cooking. I turned on every light in the apartment. Nothing. The next morning, the photo was gone. I'd kept it sealed in a folder inside a drawer. In its place was a scrap of yellowed paper that smelled faintly of lavender and smoke. Written on it, in the same neat handwriting I'd seen on the Thorne family documents, was one line. "You shouldn't have left." I went to the police again, but I could tell they'd already decided what box to put me in. The officer, a young guy who barely looked old enough to shave, tried to sound sympathetic. "You said you were at a house, but the records show it hasn't been occupied since 2003. No Mr. or Mrs. Dyer ever listed. Are you sure you didn't fall and hit your head?" I showed him the photo, now back in my phone somehow. He looked at it for a second, frowned, then said, "There's nobody else in this picture but you. Just you and the background. You sure that's not an old selfie?" When I looked again, he was right. The Dyers were gone. So was Evelyn. It was just me, standing in front of the Thorne estate, except the house in the background was burning. That night, I didn't sleep. Every noise felt amplified again. The pipes, the hum of the fridge, the steady tick of the wall clock. At around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Slow, deliberate. I froze. There shouldn't have been anyone there. I lived alone. Then came a soft knock. Once, twice, and a whisper. "Evelyn?" I didn't open it. I just sat there, back against the door, whispering I'm not her, I'm not her, I'm not her, over and over until the sun came up. When I finally opened the door that morning, there was no one there, but someone had slipped a folded piece of parchment under it. Inside, in neat black ink, was a list of names. Mine was at the bottom. Beside it, in red, fulfilled. I stopped trying to make sense of it after that. You can't reason with something that doesn't belong to reason. All I know is that sometimes, when I catch my reflection in a window or a mirror, it doesn't look quite right anymore. The eyes are sharper, older. The same eyes from that portrait above the bed in the Thorn house. I don't go near mirrors much anymore. And the humming? It's back almost every night now. Sometimes it comes from the walls, sometimes from under the floorboards. It's always the same melody. 3 notes, pause. 3 more. Lately, I've been thinking about going back. Maybe if I see what's left of the mansion, I'll finally understand. Maybe I'll find proof, something that says I didn't just lose my mind out there. But deep down, I know what I'll find. I'll find them waiting, Mr. and Mrs. Dyer, Evelyn, and they'll smile that same perfect, polite smile and say, "Welcome home." It's been 6 months since I left Ashwood Hollow. I thought distance would help, that the static in my head would fade, but it hasn't. The humming still finds me. 3 notes. Pause. 3 more. Always the same pattern. I told myself I'd never go back. And yet, here I am, parked on the same cracked road that curves toward the Thorn estate, or what's left of it. Except, there's nothing here. The hill where the house stood is empty now. The iron gate is gone. The trees look younger, like the fire never touched them. When I asked a woman at the diner in town for directions, she looked at me like I was speaking another language. Said there's never been a mansion out this way. Said the Thorns were just an old story. But I remember the wallpaper, the smell of lavender and smoke. I remember their names. I remember her face. The air feels wrong. Too still. It's late afternoon, but the sky has that heavy color it gets before a storm. Pale, metallic, humming with static. I walk to where the front steps should have been. There's grass now, uneven and soft, but under the soles of my boots, I can still feel the outline of the stone. I'm holding my phone up while I write this. The signal's almost gone, but I'll keep posting until it cuts out. I think I hear something under the ground. A vibration like a heartbeat, or maybe just the wind. I found something. Half buried under the dirt, a fragment of porcelain. It looks like part of a teacup. The pattern, small blue flowers, matches the set Mrs. Dyer used the first night I arrived. When I brushed it off, I noticed something underneath it, a corner of paper, stiff and yellowed. It's a photograph. It's the same one. Evelyn Thorn, the Dyers, and me. Only this time, no one's smiling, and the background isn't the house. It's my apartment. I don't know what time it is anymore. My phone says 2:17 every time I check. The sun hasn't moved. There's humming again, faint, just behind me. It's not the wind, it's voices, layered and distant, like a record looping backward. I turned around, and for a second, I swear, I saw the outline of the house again. Just a shimmer, like heat off asphalt. The doors, the porch, the windows glowing faintly from inside. And in one of those windows, someone standing. Small frame, pale dress. She's waving. I should leave, but I can't shake the feeling that I already did. That maybe I never really made it out. Sometimes I think about the photo and how it keeps changing. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the house isn't a place at all. If anyone reading this ever drives through Ashwood Hollow, don't stop. Don't ask for directions. If you hear humming, keep driving until it fades. I'm going to walk up the hill one more time. just to see if it's really gone. If I don't update again, please, just don't come looking. Edit. 11:42 p.m. The humming stopped. Everything's quiet now. But there's light coming from the trees, soft and gold, like a house with all the windows lit. I think I can see them on the porch, waiting,